This video is brought to you by Incogni. When Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power in 2019, there was a widespread sense of optimism. He promised to rejuvenate Ethiopia's faltering economy after 30 years of single-party rule, and nurture peace between both Ethiopia's ethnic regions and its neighbours. Originally, everything went to plan. Abiy's ambitious reforms were applauded by the international community, and he was even awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019 for negotiating a long-awaited peace with Eritrea. Today, however, that optimism and the Nobel Peace Prize looks appallingly misplaced. After a vicious 2-year civil war in Tigray, which only ended in November 2022, federal forces have spent the past 2 years trying and failing to stomp out a new insurgency in Amhara, which escalated dramatically last month when Amhara militias staged a new offensive on Gondar, one of the largest cities in Amhara. So in this video, we're going to have a look at what's happening in Amhara, how it fits into a long pattern of interethnic violence in Ethiopia, and what might happen next. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So to understand this story, you need to know a bit about Ethiopia's federalised structure. Basically, there were a number of ethnic groups in Ethiopia who often don't get along with one another, and vary wildly in size. The largest are the Oromo and Amhara. There are about 43 million Oromo, representing about 35% of the total population, and about 33 million Amhara, representing 27%. The next largest groups are the Somali and Tigray, who each make up about 6% of the population. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got groups like the Harari, who make up less than 1%. Anyway, to make sure that the rights of smaller ethnic groups are respected and to secure their democratic consent, Ethiopia is today split into 12 semi-autonomous regions, each representing a different ethnic group. According to Ethiopia's constitution, each region is responsible for implementing economic and social development policies, and for maintaining public order, i.e. they collect and distribute taxes, and have their own security services. Now, Amhara elites have never really liked this system, for 2 reasons. First, as you might expect from a bigger group in a federal system, they believe it gives too much power to Ethiopia's smaller ethnic groups, and have instead advocated for a more centralised state. But second, Amhara elites resented the fact that the federal government was dominated by Tigrayans. For context, because a Tigrayan military group, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, was responsible for ousting the communist Derg regime, which ruled with an iron fist in Ethiopia from 1974 until 1991, the TPLF dominated Ethiopia's federal politics from 1991 until basically 2019. Anyway, Amhara elites resented this, both because Tigray is a smaller region than Amhara, but also because Amhara elites used to dominate Ethiopian politics in the pre-Derg era. Amhara also had a particular bone to pick with Tigray, because when the Tigray-dominated government drew the federal boundaries in 1995, they included several regions traditionally controlled by the Amhara in Tigray. This is why Amhara elites were broadly supportive of Abiy Ahmed when he came to power in 2019. While Abiy is ethnically Oromo, he also wanted to centralise the Ethiopian state and reduce the TPLF's influence in the federal government. Amhara militias, known as Fano, even supported federal forces in their war with the TPLF between November 2020 and November 2022, in part because some Amhara elites hoped that they would be rewarded with more political power and potentially even a favourable redrawing of the Amhara-Tigray border. Unfortunately, since the war ended, Fano have been involved in constant skirmishes with federal forces and other ethnic militias. Now, there are specific reasons for this. For starters, there's been a wider uptick in Amhara-Oromo tensions, fueled by occasional skirmishes between Oromo and Amhara militias in Oromia. And there was widespread upset in late 2022 and early 2023 when Oromo priests, apparently with the support of the government, broke away from the Ethiopian church. Fano also resisted Abiy's efforts to incorporate them into the federal army in April 2023, and many Amhara feel the government betrayed them on the question of the Amhara-Tigray border. For context, during the war, Amhara forces were given control of an area officially known as Western Tigray. But the peace deal signed by Abiy's government and the TPLF required Amhara forces to withdraw, and said the status of the contested areas would be resolved, quote, in accordance with the constitution. This didn't go down well with Fano, so in November last year, the federal government promised a referendum on the territories. But this doesn't look likely to happen anytime soon. But the main reason for this new conflict is pretty simple. If you arm ethnic militias with a long history of mutual mistrust and set them loose in a chaotic multi-front conflict, they're going to end up fighting with each other. Anyway, the fighting escalated dramatically in August 2023, prompting the federal government to declare a state of emergency. But by the end of the year, it looked like the federal government had regained control. There were occasional skirmishes after this, but things were relatively calm, and in July one of Fano's senior commanders surrendered to the Ethiopian security forces, suggesting the conflict was coming to an end. However, after an increase in the frequency of attacks in July and August, in September, Fano suddenly began a new offensive, mostly centred around the city of Gondar. For context, Gondar has a population of about 400,000 people, making it one of the biggest cities in Amhara. Anyway, Fano have approached Gondar via the C-34 road, which runs from the Sudan-Ethiopian border town of Metema, which Fano forces temporarily captured in early September, and via the B-30 highway, which runs down from Tigray. On September the 17th, Fano claimed to have taken control of most of Gondar, although this has been disputed by other sources. Fano have also staged a number of assaults on the town of Weldia, presumably because, like Gondar, it sits at the intersection of a number of major roads. The Ethiopian government has once again extended the state of emergency, but the fact that insurgent violence has escalated, and the most recent attacks have been increasingly close to the federal capital Addis Ababa, means that they're unlikely to get a handle on things anytime soon. On top of that, the fact that Fano lacks a coherent leadership structure means negotiating some sort of ceasefire or peace deal is nearly impossible. So what happens next? Well, while a peace deal isn't forthcoming, Fano have been unable to expand the conflict outside Amhara, and it's not like Ethiopia is at risk of state failure anytime soon. Perhaps the main risk for the federal government, though, is if Fano was to start cooperating with Eritrea. Eritrea has ties to Fano dating back to the Tigray War, when it trained Fano militias against the TPLF, and relations between Eritrea and Ethiopia have deteriorated since Abiy essentially threatened to invade Eritrea to gain access to its ports. If this were to happen, the conflict could escalate rapidly. Now, as we've demonstrated in this video, there's a huge amount of uncertainty in the world of politics and current affairs, often with few easy solutions. Unfortunately, this can be the case online too. There are all kinds of bad actors out there that want to try and use you to make a quick buck. Take, for instance, data brokers. They collect, aggregate, and sell your personal information, including names, aliases, social security numbers, login credentials, home addresses, location history, online activity, and more to the highest bidder. This can result in everything from spam to identity theft. Luckily for you, though, there is a solution: Incogni. They work on your behalf to request your personal data removal. They also deal with any objections, and to make sure that your personal information isn't shared by the brokers again, conduct repeated removal requests. And with their family and friends plan, they'll even do this for you and up to 3 of, well, your friends and family. So, create an account with our link in the description, grant Incogni the ability to work on your behalf, and sit back as they make you safer. Plus, by using our link, you'll get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Thanks for checking it out, and thanks to Incogni for sponsoring this video.